Everybody wants to deliver me a pizza with new no contact delivery, where they like bring the pizza to your house and then they set it down and back away slowly as if it's full of nitroglycerin or something. I don't want no contact delivery. I don't want any delivery. I'm making my own pizza, and I'm taking you along with me for the ride. Oh, I'm so out of practice. Here are the ingredients you're going to need to make the crust for the pizza. 4½ cups or 20.25 ounces of flour, 1 3/4 teaspoons or 0.44 ounces of salt, 1 teaspoon or 0.11 ounce of instant yeast, 1/4 cup or 2 ounces of olive oil or vegetable oil, and 1 3/4 cups or 14 ounces of water. Let's talk about these ingredients a little bit before we get into the actual process. Your flour, we're using bread flour. Bread flour has high protein. It's going to make more gluten. It's going to give a better structure. It's going to be chewier. It's going to hold those yeast bubbles in better. And it's just going to be all around, it's the right choice for pizza crust. If you have all-purpose flour, you can make it with all-purpose flour. It'll have a little bit more of like a biscuity texture, but it'll still be pretty freaking delicious. Salt, not a lot to say. Salt. This recipe calls for instant yeast, but if you have the more common packets of active dry yeast, you can use those. Just look up on the internet, convert the amount of instant dry to active. There'll be a ratio, you'll multiply it, and you'll get the amount that you should use. Finally, we have olive oil. Oil helps add flavor and helps keep the dough from sticking, makes it a little bit crispier. I like to use olive oil. I think it's perfect for pizza dough. You can use a neutral vegetable oil if you want, but I think olive oil is the way to go. The last thing you're going to need to make this recipe is a scale. Well, you don't absolutely need it because the recipe does give volume measurements, and if that's what you've got, any pizza's better than none. But measuring out the ingredients by weight is going to give more precise results. We are measuring in ounces because this is America. The whole rest of the world is welcome to convert to grams if you like. Now, I'm lucky enough to have a KitchenAid stand mixer, and I know a lot of you people out there also have a KitchenAid stand mixer because they're very, very popular. You can absolutely make this in just a regular old mixing bowl if you so desire. You're going to have to knead the dough by hand. This is a yeast dough, and it will need kneading, but I'm going to be doing it in my KitchenAid mixer. Into the bowl of the mixer is going to go 20.25 ounces of flour, 0.44 ounces of salt, 1 teaspoon or 0.11 ounces of instant yeast, and I'm going to stir that together using the whisk attachment just to mix it up. Now, if you were thinking, wait a minute, there's an ingredient he must have left out. You can't make bread without water. You are 100% right. I just didn't put that in the ingredients list because I assume that you have water. If you don't have water, stop making a pizza and go find water. Please get help now. The water that we're going to be working with is ice cold. And if you're used to making yeasted breads with warm water to activate the yeast, that's actually the opposite of what we're trying to do here. This pizza dough is going to benefit from a long, slow proofing in the refrigerator overnight. And what happens is that those little yeast work so slowly that bacteria, like lactobacteria, I don't know what they're called, bacteria in the flour also get enough time to do their work and make really delicious, yummy flavors. Don't worry, they're good bacteria, they're not bad bacteria. Normally when you do a yeasted bread, the yeast just is so much more active that the bacteria never gets a chance to catch up. But by doing a long, slow overnight proof in the fridge, we're going to get much better flavor. So we're going to use cold water because we want to keep the yeast sleeping. Don't let them wake up. So I've got a big thing of ice water here, and I'm just going to measure out 14 ounces of the ice water. And then we're going to put in 2 ounces of our olive oil into the cold water. Should really measure this out separately in case I go over, but I don't think it's that. We're going to switch from the whisk straight to the dough hook. A lot of recipes will tell you to use the paddle attachment for this part, but you're going to end up on the dough hook anyway, so you may as well just freaking use it. That's my philosophy. We're going to start the mixer on the lowest speed, and we're going to add the water and the oil mixture. Alright. And that is going to come together into a nice, cohesive dough in about 5 minutes. Oh yeah, baby. This is the good stuff right here. This is the good part right here. Now, if you're doing this without a mixer in a bowl, just get yourself a great big metal spoon or a wooden spatula, or heck, just do it with your hands. Get it sort of together, and then you're going to need to knead it. I'll show you that in a minute, just in case, because it seems obvious, like, how do you knead? But if you've never kneaded before, there's actually a technique to it. I always end up having to put in like another ounce of flour. I have no freaking idea why. Maybe hold back some of that water. Don't put the whole water in. Because look at this dough. Look at this. This is not dough. Get some flour. Flour your work surface. Clean your work surface. Get some flour. Not too much, because you don't want to dry the dough out. Except I do, because it's too much freaking water. Pat it out. Fold it over. Press it with your heel of your hand. Fold it. Press it with the heel of your hand, rotate it 90 degrees. Fold it, press it with the heel of your hand. You can fold it back towards you. So here, you may not rotate it, it's up to you. Fold, heel. Now pull it back towards me. Heel of the hand. Fold from the side, heel of the hand. Fold it back towards me. Basically going zoop, zoop, making 90-degree folds every time. And it's just you're gonna just do that for like 10 minutes. They say 600 strokes is how long you want to knead it. What you're doing here is you're developing gluten in the bread, which is a delicious protein that gives bread its chewy structure and also lets it hold those air bubbles, keeps the gas from the yeast inside the bread so it doesn't escape, and gives bread its lovely textures. So I'm going to knead this for about 6 minutes in the mixer, or 600 strokes if you're doing it by hand. If you're using a mixer, you'll know that you're done when the dough sticks to the bottom of the bowl but doesn't really stick to the sides. If it's not sticking to the bottom at all, it's too dry, and you can add like a tablespoon or two of this cold water. If it's sticking to the sides, or it's just really spreading out, then it's too wet, and you can add a little bit of flour. After you do that, make sure you let it mix for a while, because it's going to take a little while for that to work its way through the dough. Now at this point, it's a pandemic. The pizza recipe you're using isn't really working out. You get some of that ice cubes from the ice that the ice water. You'll put that in a small glass. Wait for it to knead. This is how I make this recipe every time. I follow the recipe precisely. I put in exactly the amount of water that the recipe calls for. The dough is way too wet, and then I just throw in ounce after ounce of flour, and for like 25 minutes I'm kneading this dough, adding more and more flour until it gets... Do I measure how much flour I put in? No. Every time I'm just like, damn. It's like I think that if I follow the recipe, this time it'll be different. It never is. So now, the dough is done. Because I said it's done. The dough is tacky, but not sticky. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to divide it. We're going to put it on a pan to proof. I've got this little sheet pan. Anything that'll go in your fridge will work. If you are not experienced at shaping pizza, you might want to divide it into like 4 or 6 pieces. 6 pieces will make little like 8-inch pizzas. I like to divide it in half, and that makes about a 16-inch pizza, 14-inch maybe. I don't remember what size pan I have. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to weigh it, because that's how you divide things, right? accurately. Don't just eyeball it, goofballs. 42, 37 ounces, 38 ounces. Okay, so I'm going to just divide it in half. So no, that's small. Once you've divided it in half, now we're just going to mess a ripped up piece of dough. And we're just going to go back to our kneading motion and fold the sides in and rotate. Fold the side in and rotate just a little bit. And that's going to kind of get it back with a smooth surface into a ball shape. Once we got that ball formed, smooth ball, I'm going to start sort of folding it and stretching the surface, folding it into a little puckered bit there, and that. So rotating, stretching, getting a nice stretch, taut surface across the top, and that, my friends, that's what we're going for. We're going to set that on the sheet. You can use parchment paper here if you want to. It'll keep it from sticking. It's not that big a deal, I don't think. So let's fold, push, and rotate. And see, that's already starting to sort of pull the dough around and stretch it into that ball shape. I'm not sure how well I'm demonstrating this. You can see it from the bottom. Kind of pulling around and pushing into the center. Kind of like that. Except instead of making a ball. Now those are going to sort of settle and expand in the fridge. We're going to cover that. Some plastic crap to keep it from drying out. We're going to put this in the fridge overnight, at least 8 hours. More is better to a point. Maybe 24 hours is kind of ideal. Depending on how cold your fridge is, you can keep it for up to 3 days. The longer it stays in there, the more flavorful it's going to get, but it's also going to kind of continue to kind of expand. It's not going to rise very much. If you're used to bread dough doubling in 2 hours, it's not like that. But at the end of the third day, it's definitely going to be sort of loose and slack. I feel like about 24 hours is about perfect. It's the next day, and we're going to make our pizza. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the oven rack on the lowest position. Pizza ovens are awesome. Home ovens are not up to the standards, and one of the challenges we're going to have to overcome is getting as much heat as possible into the bottom of the oven so we get a nice crispy crust without overcooking the toppings. If you have a pizza stone, that is a great way to solve that problem. Shove your pizza stone in there. If you don't have a pizza stone, you may not, it's still going to be delicious pizza, but the results may not be quite what you expect from like a professional restaurant. And we're going to set the temperature. I'm going to set mine as hot as my oven will go. Again, there are various ways to kind of try to solve this problem of too much heat getting in the top, not enough getting in the bottom, but this is what I'm going to get. So I'm going to set to 550 Fahrenheit. That's what we're going to do. What are you going to cook your pizza on? If, like me, you once worked in a pizza restaurant, perhaps you own some pizza skins. These are fantastic because they let the air get through and really get to the crust while still giving you something to hold your crust on so it doesn't fall apart. If you don't have something like that, you can just use a sheet pan. Just turn it over, as opposed to the lips will protect the crust from air and affect how it cooks. So just cook on the back side of a sheet pan. You're going to need to make a little smaller one. You're not going to be able to make a 16-inch on something like this, but that's what I would suggest. Cooking spray will keep it from sticking. I'm going to go over to the sink and do that so I don't get cooking spray all over my kitchen. Here are the dough balls from the fridge. You can see they've risen just a little bit, but they're still pretty firm. I'm going to take one of them out, put the other one back in the fridge, and if you have a little plastic scraper, that is a great way to get it off. But don't overthink it. You're going to slap it out anyway, so if it gets a little deformed, that's not the end of the world. Put some flour down on the bench, and what do we call it? The bench. You sit on a bench. Now, this is the part where we have to slap out or roll out the pizza crust. If you want to just get a roller and roll it out to about 1/8 of an inch, yeah, I think about 1/8 of an inch thickness, that's fine. I'm going to use a technique I learned at Papa John's 25 years ago. So first I'm going to form the crust, and I'm going to do that by kind of taking my fingertips and rolling inward and rotate. Roll inward and press and rotate form the crust, the edge, if you will. Oh, got a little bubble there. It's not the end of the world. So that's what we're going to get. Okay, and then I'm going to hold with this hand, and I'm going to kind of begin to stretch with the left hand. You could do it with your right hand. I'm just left-handed. And as I do that, I'm going to press down a little bit and start to kind of flatten and enlarge the dough. Until it gets to about here. At Papa John's, they taught us that you never toss the dough because that thins out the center, and it means that the tip of each slice falls apart and all your toppings fall off. So, once you get to about this point, you're going to roll it onto the back of your hand, and then you're going to put your hand, you're going to kind of have your hands like this, and use your knuckles to kind of spread and stretch it the rest of the way out to size. So, I'm just going to begin to stretch and rotate, trying to keep it even. It'll kind of want to get thin in the center, so you can kind of come to the edge here and stretch the edge. And feel for any thick spots and kind of try to stretch them out a little bit more. Why don't you just roll it out? I don't know. Nobody rolls them out though. Maybe it's because you'll lose the crust if you roll it out. I know what you want. You want to see me slap it. Not bad for 25 years. There we go. Well, it's a little small for the pan, but it's okay. Now we're going to sauce. You can spend a lot of time making a fancy pizza sauce if you prefer, but if you're in a hurry, then why are you waiting 24 hours with a slow fermentation pizza dough? Anyway, we're just going to use good old spaghetti sauce. I'm going to pour some of that in the center, and we'll use the back of a ladle or spoon to spread it in a circular motion from the center out to the edges. That's a little too thin, I think. From the center out to the edges, and as you get to the edge, you're going to be careful not to get any on the outside of the crust. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to get your cheese and you're going to get your toppings, and of course we're going to be topping this with pineapple. No? Next we're going to get shredded mozzarella cheese and pepperoni. Pepperoni's above or below the cheese? It's a big philosophical debate. Pepperonis below the cheese are going to be a little less crispy. It is nice to see the pepperonis on top though. I'm going to go with pepperoni below the cheese. Then we're going to insert our pizza on the bottom rack. And the smoke detector will go off. Why? Now, we're going to set a 3-minute timer. And we're going to have a little pokey knife because bubbles are going to form and they're going to try to ruin our pizza. We're going to poke those bubbles. But we don't want to open the oven too much and let the heat out. Oh yeah, we got bubbles. We got bubbles. Just poke those bubbles down. Poke them down. Poke those bubbles. We do not want, this is a bubbly pizza. Sometimes it's got bubbles everywhere. Freaking bubbles. All over the place. Okay, and close it up. 3 more minutes. Hey Mamba, you looking for pizza? You want pizza, Mamba? What kind of pizza do you like the best? 3 more minutes. We're going to check for bubbles. We're going to poke those bubbles down. And we are going to rotate the pizza 180 degrees. So many bubbles in this. Why is this dough so bubbly? I don't know. This is a weird one. This is a weird one. I poke those bubbles, that's all. Okay, and close it up. Now at this point in the process, the typical conundrum I get into is that the cheese on top starts turning brown, but the bottom of the crust isn't quite done yet. And usually what happens is I just pull it before the bottom is fully done. And this is just a limitation of home ovens. People on the internet spend hours and hours trying to figure out how to get around. One way to get around it is to put the pizza in the oven with just the sauce on it to keep the dough from getting underneath the crust, from getting too cooked, and then put the cheese on top like halfway through the cook cycle. It always just feels like heresy to me. We're gonna check one more time for bubbles. Oh, see, it's totally getting done. It's totally getting done. Look at this. It's totally getting done. Look. You see, that top is done. Up at the bottom, I bet it could use a little more, but we're not gonna burn it. We're gonna pull it. We're gonna call that, and we're gonna pull it. And there we go. There's our pizza. How do we do, man? How do we do? Like, how's the bottom? That's pretty good, actually. That's pretty good on the bottom. That's not bad. Honestly, that's not too bad. So I like to let it cool for a minute to solidify. Transfer it over here. Boom, baby. Pandemic pizza. There's only one step left. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Look at that. That's a good bottom. Look at that. Oh, yeah. You got that solid, crispy bottom with a little bubbly part and a chewy part. Alright, well, now I got pizza. Let's go fly some FPV. I'm out of here.